IBEW Local 98 here in Philadelphia. We are proud to be sponsoring tonight's NFL Draft coverage here on 6 ABC. Go Birds!
It's the biggest, most important draft in the history of this Philadelphia football franchise. It will determine the outcome of the season for the next 5 years and beyond before a down is ever played. Welcome to the JAKIB Media Sports NFL Draft Special. Live on 6abc.com from Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Presented by First Trust Bank, the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. IBEW Local 98, 6ABC, and United Healthcare. Let's go, Philly. Let's get this draft show underway. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to the final undrafted free agency edition of the JAKIB Draft Special, brought to you by IBEW Local 98. Eagles make a slew of signings and undrafted free agency, a couple standout names, a couple probably depth pieces. John, I'll kick it right to you. What's your initial reaction on the undrafted class? I know Eli Ricks is a standout name. What's your take on the overall class and how it looks?
Yeah, typical of the Eagles in that, they budget a little bit more than most teams in the NFL for an undrafted free agent class. Another aspect where it's nice to have an owner like Jeffrey Lurie. He deserves credit for that. So you have some pretty high profile gets. I think, the name that's going to jump out to everybody is Eli Ricks, as you mentioned. The Alabama cornerback actually started at LSU. He was one of the top recruits in the country. It's funny, the 2020 recruiting class, if you went consensus wise, number one was Ringo, number two was Eli Rex. So, and the Eagles got them both over the weekend. So he's going to be the splashiest name. I know Todd McShay, it's out there very early in the process, which kind of tells you why early mock drafts are a waste of time, but
right.
Had him as like the 10th overall pick in this draft. Obviously things didn't go as Eli had projected in his college career, both at LSU and Alabama, sort of a part-time starter. Got a lot of length, looks like an outside corner. Obviously, when you're a five-star recruit, a lot of talent. A little bit underwhelming, though, to be honest. I think he ran a 4.55, so I think people were expecting more balls out of the draft class and into undrafted free agency. But hey, man, we're talking about
is that just a production thing, John? I mean, if he's that highly rated, was there an
well, I
injury?
think it was more traits than anything else because again, 4.55 is not great for an NFL corner.
Right.
Calais Ringo's, in the 4.3s as an example. So yeah, and he's a press corner. But it's a worthy signing. You saw it last year with Josh Jobe from Alabama.
Right.
And he was able to make the 53. Eagles are a lot deeper at corner now, so you're probably looking at more of a practice squad, start him there and see what happens. And you got to worry about guys like that, getting them through waivers. If you think about last year's, you always want a lot of bodies at cornerbacks, Xander, always, because things are going to happen.
Yep.
And Howie had mentioned, the Eagles stayed relatively healthy. That was one of their Avonte Maddox had a bunch of injuries, banged up 3 different times. But outside, Darius Slay, for the most part, stayed healthy. James Bradbury stayed healthy. I don't know if you can count on that. Howie mentioned that.
Especially considering, the age of Slay and where he's getting, he's one of the older cornerbacks in the league now.
Yeah, 32. James is going to be 30 in August. So, now you have Calais Ringo, you have Greedy Williams, who they signed. Josh Jobe is coming back for a second year. He's an outside corner. You have Zach McPherson. I said, they should probably kick him inside to be Avonte's backup. So, much deeper at corner than they were in the past. But, I could see him sticking a year on the practice squad. You saw it last year with Mario Goodrich. You had Josh Blackwell and Josh Jobe were the three undrafted corners they had last year, and they wanted to keep them all. Josh Blackwell got claimed on waivers, so and by wanted to keep them all, I mean on the practice squad. Obviously, Josh was the only one who was going to be on the 53-man roster, but you expanded practice squads are 16 now, so you have that opportunity. And I think if they can get them on the practice squad, that would be the best case scenario. They got a punter. That's a big deal. Ty Zentner. And, the thing about Ty Zentner is he can kick off as well. He's got a strong leg. He can hold. We'll see how good he is. That's big for the Eagles because, I think that's one of the underrated things in the NFL when you talk about that sort of battery between the long snapper, the holder, and the kicker. Jake Elliott's got to feel comfortable with that, so we'll see how he handles that. But they finally got some competition in for Aaron Cepas, and that's important. The most interesting guy to me is the Michigan State linebacker Ben Van Sumeren, because he's a ridiculous athlete. And he started at Michigan, finished at Michigan. All these guys now, college football's different, man. They go shopping for an opportunity.
Yeah, they bounce around. Yeah.
Yeah. So
is that right? He started as an offensive player?
I don't know if that's the case. I have to look into that.
I saw that on, I think it was NBC Sports Philadelphia. It said he started his college career at Michigan as an offensive player. It doesn't say what position or anything.
Yeah, well, the reason it's possible because he ran, 6'2", 231, ran a 4.45. He's got a 42.5-inch vertical leap. He's not very instinctive. That's sort of the knock on him as a linebacker. And that makes sense if he's not a natural linebacker.
Seth Joyner will hate that.
Yeah, but I'm looking at his special teams.
Right.
I could be, and the Eagles need some help there. And it's not a big deal, and people don't care about it until it is a big deal. And if he can just run and show up that athleticism on special teams to start, and then turn into a linebacker down the road, that could be something that helps the Eagles. If you look at their undrafted class last year, and Jobe was, pretty highly thought of, but the other guy who made it was Reed Blankenship, and he was at the bottom. He got the least amount of money, and he ended up making the team and being the biggest contributor. So you never know with these guys. And, some of the others, Jordan Hasselwood, a wide receiver, started at Oklahoma with Jalen Hurts, finished at Arkansas, so he's got a history with Jalen. Clemson's Joseph Ngata, he's sort of a big, lengthy guy, big receiver. Knock on him is he doesn't get much separation. LSU cornerback McKee Garner was brought in. Again, you want a number of cornerback bodies. Yeah. And the other guy who might be a little bit interesting, because I know Jeff Stoutland still so well, is Louisville offensive tackle Trevor Reed. He's got a lot of traits, is how he likes to say, a lot of traits in his body. Not the biggest guy in the world, so that's the knock on him, especially for a tackle.
I think he had a late start in football, Trevor Reed, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's all like vertical leap. He's top percentile, broad jump, 40-yard dash, 20-yard split, anything, shuttle, 3-cone, everything. He's at the top of the list when it comes to athleticism. So you can see Jeff Stoutland saying, wow, this kid's really athletic. I can teach him the technique part of it. I think that's what's going on there.
A dart for Stoutland U.
Yeah. So when I looked at sort of his athletic profile, That one put an antenna up for me because that's sort of what Jeff likes to work with. And he gets a lot of deference when it comes, and how we mentioned that in the draft as well. They kind of trust Jeff when it's like, all right, he likes a prospect. Let's try to bring him in here.
Yeah, I want to go to the two offensive receivers that they picked up. Jadon Hazelwood, who, as you mentioned, started with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma, and then Joseph Ngata, the wide receiver from Clemson. Seemed like big frame wide receivers. Hazelwood 6'2", 215. Ngata's 6'3", 217. So seems like they're looking for a style of receiver there. How do you see them fit? Is that darts for a potential wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, even kind of filling into that Zach Pascal role? Or how do you see that?
Well, I think most people look at the Eagles and say, well, they need an upgrade in the slot. And
Right.
most teams have, shorter, shiftier, short area quickness is what you think about when you think about most slot receivers, the Julian Edelmans of the world,
Right.
the Wes Welkers of the world, those guys. But you can go about it a different way. I think if you look at Buffalo, with Stephon Diggs, he's so good. If you have 11 personnel on the field, he's going to be outside most of the time. But if you only have 2 receivers, he's going to be on the field as well, playing outside. On third downs, though, when you do want a slot receiver and you're back to 11, he'll move inside. And he's such a good route runner that he sort of dominates from the slot. I could see that developing with Devontae Smith. Obviously he's going to be outside most of the time, early downs, even if you're in 12. But, on those third down, obvious passing situations, maybe you kick Devontae Smith inside. And A.J. Brown can play from the slot as well as a bigger slot receiver. So you can go about things.
Receivers, yeah.
Yeah, you can go about things a different way. And I think that's what the Eagles are sort of envisioning. And then you want bodies. You need bodies, and Quez Watkins needs to be pushed. And I think Quez Watkins is a natural outside receiver, playing out of position when he's in the slot. So, you take some shots. You didn't get one in the draft, and you take some shots. And as you mentioned, Hazelwood has a history with Jalen Hurts, so that'll help him. I was reading up a little bit about Ngata and, some lack of separation issues. That's not a positive, I think. So that
Especially
might
when you get to the NFL level, it's different. Yeah.
That might be more of a sort of, Hail Mary, but they could use help in pushing Quez Watkins. So whether these guys turn out to be that, whether it's more of a veteran guy after June 1st, it's not over. Howie Rosen always says talent gathering season doesn't end. This is the biggest part of it, the draft weekend, right. But it doesn't end. Post June 1st, he'll be looking. And I think that's still an area, wide receiver 3, they want to improve on.
Yeah, I think I saw a quote from, I'm not sure if Hurts made the quote yesterday, but talking about Jadon Hazelwood as he plays like a grown man. Part of me believes that the way Jalen plays offense, and you talk about it all the time on Birds 365, it's not your drop back style quarterback. There's a lot of versatility to it. He makes these receivers a little bit more versatile, where you can move them around and shuffle the deck. Is that fair to say?
I don't know. I think that's more about the running backs than the receivers. I mean, the receivers, I think the Eagles just have 2 really good receivers. I mean,
yeah, they are really good. That's for
sure. Those guys can just play every position all over and play it at a high level, and then it kind of falls off. But you can't have everything. I mean, you can't have superstars. There's traffic issues. And by the way, Dallas Goedert plays into this as well. because he can play flex receiver and dominate sort of in a different way as a big body. You keep extra linebacker on the field. You have the matchups. So they manipulate things that way. For the running backs, and everybody got into, whether it was Robinson or Gibbs and saying, well, you need a running back can catch the football. Jalen doesn't dump it off to the running back. So he's competent in his ability to get extra yardage. And I don't think you need that role as much. And I think people don't know it yet because they haven't seen it. But Kenny Gainwell is a really good receiver. And in a different offense with a different style quarterback, like the kid they drafted, Tanner McKee from Stanford, you hope he doesn't have to play. But if he has to play, Kenny Gainwell would become much more important in the passing game because he's a guy who's got to dump the ball off, and he's a guy you got to get the ball to, swing routes to the wide receiver, to a running back out of the backfield. Traditional pocket passer. That's where I think, it's not as important when Jalen is in the game.
John, some pretty good names. I know, obviously, when you get to the undrafted class, you are just throwing darts at the dartboard and seeing camp bodies and things of that nature. But there does seem to be some good names down here. Eli Ricks, as you mentioned, Ngata, Hazelwood. Is there any particular reason why these guys dropped? Is there any standout reasons? Was one of them a medical, or is this just there's so much talent going in the draft, these guys just didn't make the cut? Because when I see some of the 7th round names get drafted, I mean, I'm surprised nobody took a shot on Eli Ricks, in round 6 or 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Eli had some injuries early in his career at LSU, but I don't think there's anything right now. He just didn't live up to expectations, and you kind of fall out of the process. There's always good players that fall out of the draft, but it's usually something like Ben Sumarin, as I mentioned, is not very instinctive. So typically, if you have a linebacker who's got a feel for the position that has his athleticism, he's going to be a day 2 pick at least. But he doesn't have a good feel for the position. As I mentioned with Ngata, it's sort of, doesn't have tremendous burst, can't get a lot of separation. And you look for traits generally with these guys, and that's where guys like Garner's big at cornerback, Ricks is lengthy, Reed, we mentioned his athleticism. And, I forget, I think it was Howie who said, it might have been Nick, but, coach, the title is there for a reason. I think everybody, I say this all the time to Jody as well, too many people think you draft a good player or a bad player. It doesn't stop now, whether it's Jalen Carter or the bottom guy on your undrafted free agent list. They all got to develop. They all got to be coached up, developed, sort of encompassed into the scheme, the philosophy, the system. And fit is a big deal. And if you go to a bad organization with a bad coach, and your career can be derailed. And if you go to a good organization, you get good coaching, all of a sudden you can develop. And that's a part of the process where I think everybody doesn't put as much emphasis as they should on. Nobody. And Jalen Carter might be the most talented player in this draft. I think he is, from just a
football standpoint.
Grading prospects. A lot of people, NFL.com's got him number 1. So everyone from him on down. Now, he's so gifted, you got a lot more wiggle room. He's probably going to be a good player. His issues are maturity related, things like that. So, hopefully he grows up a little bit. Hopefully, he's got a good ecosystem here with Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, and now Nolan Smith, Calais Ringo, on and on and on. plus Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, all those guys, and the coaches. Good ecosystem for them, but you still got to develop. You still got to develop these players. And Jalen Hurts is a perfect example of that. I mean, look how he's developed as a player. He deserves a lot of credit for that, but so did Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson and Kevin Patullo and Adam Daydew out in Southern California and Tom House and everybody else. That's one of those behind the curtains things that, there are certain guys who are so gifted. That's why I bring up Jalen, that they're going to be good players if the work ethic is there and all that kind of stuff. But development is a big part of the process.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of the tweet you put out earlier today. I don't like draft grades, but I'll grade the decision making, because this is everybody's got to develop, to become the players. You can't really grading a draft. It doesn't make much sense right after it finishes. John, have the terms of these been revealed? I know last year there was a big stink made because the Eagles, went up over everybody else to pick up Carson Strong, and they spent the most of most teams do in undrafted free agency. I'm not sure if the terms have been revealed, but is this another year on par with the Eagles spending at the top in the undrafted class?
That stuff kind of gets unveiled as the contracts are filed with the NFLPA.
Right.
Then it'll start sort of leaking out. The Eagles are always first, or top five, not always first, but always top five-ish when it comes to the budget for undrafted free agents. But even that, I mean, it's a little bit overrated from the standpoint of all undrafted guys have offset language. So basically, if they get cut in Philadelphia and they sign somewhere else, there's an offset, so the Eagles aren't on the hook. The key number is the guaranteed and guarantees that they offered. They did offer a significant guarantee, the Carson Strong. Obviously, that didn't work out, but Jeffrey is, the Eagles always have one of the bigger budgets for undrafted free agency. And that sort of varies from year to year because the roster is so deep now, they don't need as many undrafted free agents as they might in a typical year. Now, they didn't have a ton of picks. Sometimes you have 10 or 11. You need fewer. Sometimes they've been down at 5 for 3 of the pit. They were 5 last year, 5 after Carson Wentz, sort of the trade to manipulate to get him. In those years, you need more undrafted free agents, so obviously the budget goes up a little bit. They didn't need as many as they have in recent years, so it might be a little bit down from last year, but I wouldn't read too much into that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they made a little bit
Plus,
of a
they didn't
bump.
get a quarterback either. They didn't need
Right.
a quarterback. So
You tend to make the most, I guess, in
Yeah.
the undrafted class.
yeah.
John, what do you make of? It seems we're now done the draft. We're done, mostly done the undrafted free agency period. Not much linebacker. I know they added Van Sumeren, who we just talked about, but it seems like the Eagles continue down the road of neglecting the linebacker position. What's your overall take on it? And I know, as Howie said, and you mentioned at the top of the show, talent acquisition season is not done yet, but what's your thoughts on the linebacker position? And I mean, the Eagles did lose TJ Edwards. They lost Kaiser White, so who had I thought 2 good years for both of those players. Well, what's your take on that position?
Yeah, I think it's a blind spot. I've been honest about that. The organization, it's hard to criticize Howie right now, but that's one area where I will criticize him. For the most part, I agree with him. The position should be devalued. You shouldn't be taking linebackers in the first round like the Lions. The Lions are an interesting case study for a lot of reasons.
It's like the opposite of the Eagles.
Taking a running back at 12 and a linebacker. And they're a good team, by the way. But, they're a good team. When you mentioned about that tweet I sent out about judging decisions, that's what I'm talking about. They might get good players, but those are bad decisions.
Right.
And I think about when you talk about, people you stack good decisions, you're going to have good outcomes, because good decisions don't guarantee good outcomes. But the more good decisions you make, the more good outcomes you're going to have over a longer period of time. Vice versa, the more bad decisions you make, the more bad outcomes. Now, the Lions haven't been very good, but they drafted at the top for so long because they haven't been very good. They're starting to accumulate some significant talent. Nobody knows, though, where was Gibbs going to go? Not a lot of teams are taking Gibbs at 12. So you start talking about the valuation. What can you move down? Can you get him later in the first round? Can you get him in the early second round? You like the player, go get him. He might turn into a Pro Bowl player. It might even seem to the outside, oh, well, they got a good player. Well, they didn't make a good decision, though. Right. And that tells me that they're not going to make a good decision down the road, and maybe that hurts them.
Starts to compound.
Yeah. So that's sort of the unknown of it all. But it's an interesting dichotomy, and Howie was like a lot of us. He said, well, they pigeonholed. He knew it right away. He talked about it. Well, they signed Montgomery. They spent the 12th pick on Gibbs. They got to get rid of DeAndre Swift. He went out and got him.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that I think it was Joe Banner who tweeted out, like, where are the other teams? Like, could nobody really beat the Eagles?
It's amazing. It's amazing. These dummies that Howie is putting over a barrel.
It doesn't even seem like he has to work that hard to do it. He's just making the sound decisions.
Now, let's be honest. I don't want to overstate it. DeAndre has never ran for more than 600 and whatever 50 yards. He hasn't crossed that barrier. We're not talking about a superstar player, but he's still very young. He still had some injury issues, and maybe he stays healthy. And, it's a worthwhile for all the Bijan or bust people. I mean, yeah, that's not how you build a successful NFL team. Howie gets it, but we started this at the linebackers. For the most part, I agree with him, but he's at the point, he's gone too far at linebacker. Like, he's still getting the DeAndre Swifts of the world. He's still getting the Rashad Pennies of the world, guys who have traits in their bodies that, if everything hits and they do stay healthy behind this offensive line with this quarterback, it could be pretty impressive. At linebacker, I mean, he drafted Nakobe Dean, and people will point to that, but he drafted Nakobe Dean because he fell so far. He wasn't going to draft Nakobe Dean. So you give him credit for that. But right now, and there's three names I look at: T.J. Edwards, as you mentioned, Kaiser White, and I go back to Alex Singleton. The Eagles have had this mentality of, all right, we'll just put that position together, but they've had more misses than hits, and they seem to forget the Corey Nelsons of the world, the Eric Wilsons, the L.J. Forts, players like that, and they say, oh, Alex Singleton overachieves. He's going to get money from Denver. By the way, he played well last year as well.
Yeah. I think he led the team in tackles.
Yeah, let's let him walk. T.J. Edwards, which, by the way, I'm a little surprised by from the fact, because they should take pride in T.J. Edwards, undrafted kid who they developed into a really good player. And they said, oh, $6.5 million. Nope, can't pay that. Kaiser White got 2 years. Nope, can't do that. Nicholas Morrow, are you comfortable going into week one with Nicholas Morrow as your all-ball linebacker next to Nakobe Dean, who, by the way, for all the talk about, Butkus Award, Georgia, 36 snaps last year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of projection.
John, I want to get your opinion on this. And this is strictly an opinion, not a report or anything like that. What do you think that it's in the modern NFL, they're right about this? Do you not really need to stack the line? TJ Edwards didn't make that much money. And like you
No,
said,
well,
they
that's what I
drafted him, they
mean.
developed him. I mean, that wasn't a crazy contract. It's not like they paid him $10 million a year.
Devin White is the interesting name in this discussion because he's asked for a trade. He makes a lot of money. He was the top 5 pick. And for the most part, he hasn't played well. For the most part, he hasn't played well.
Playoffs that 1 year, yeah.
Yeah. In that playoffs, in their run to the Super Bowl, he was unbelievable. He was arguably their best player against, by the way, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes, 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. For that 3-game stretch, he was like Nick Foles of defense. He just went insane and made plays all over the field. Would I pay him what Tampa Bay spent? Not even close. But it can tell you that a linebacker can impact the game. That three. So I think there's a comfortable place in the middle. I thought TJ Edwards was that comfortable place in the middle because $6.5 million. We developed him. Something Howie can pat himself and the scouts on. Look who we found. Pro Football Focus is 6th best off-ball linebacker in football. $6.5 million. Nope. Now,
yeah, I mean, and I think the Eagles went out late off season last year, and they signed Kaiser White as well after the draft for 1 year, $5 million. That's where I struggle to figure it out. I mean, if you could have locked Edwards down for 3 years, I think the deal was at 6.5 per.
Yeah, that was
they
the
must
one
really
surprise.
not value the position.
Yeah, they don't, and it's Chicago's another team. Jody and I argue they just make bad decisions, and they paid Tremaine Edmonds just absurd money. And I've said I guaranteed the day he signed that contract, 2 years he's going to be cut.
Yeah,
I guarantee it. They're going to be happy with TJ. They're going to cut him because the expectations are so out of whack. Everybody's saying, well, why'd we pay this guy this much money? They make bad decisions. But there's a comfortable place in the middle where you don't have to just say, all right, hey, we picked up these 2 trinkets in the Walmart clearance aisle. Let's go do it. Versus, good players who are not great players, sort of like TJ Edwards and Kaiser White. But I think it's a bit of a blind spot for the organization.
Is there a 2023 version of Kaiser White? I remember after the draft ended, some people were not clamoring for him, but they were saying, hey, he was out there. He'd be a good pickup. He was decent with the Chargers, and eventually Howie made the move. Is there someone like that on the market right now that you know of?
Not on the free agent market. I'm sure there's guys, and that's where this might be sort of the CJ Gardner-Johnson move,
right
at the end of training camp, where they pick up a linebacker. Maybe he's on the last year of his rookie deal, and they can sort of figure it out that way. But I got to tell you, I got a real tough time thinking they're going into the season with Nakobe Dean and Nicholas Morrow being their starting linebackers. I got a real tough time imagining that. I will say that.
Yeah, it's a weird thing when you talk about and you lay it all out, and then you think about how much TJ made, and they move on from him. But that's going to do it, John. We wrap up. We recap the undrafted free agents pretty good. Before I let you go, I want you to grade the decisions made by Howie yesterday, and you can do a totality of all of day 3. What'd you think of the decision made by Howie?
Damn it, he did a good job. I'm really, as you know, I've been saying Howie's one of the best GMs in the NFL for a very long time, and now there's been sort of a pendulum effect where everybody thinks he's God's gift to NFL personnel. And I think there's a little part. He still makes mistakes. I mentioned one of the blind spots, linebacker. Everybody's so over the top. that I want to look for the bad decisions. He's not making any. I mean, they got arguably the best linebacker, best talent in the NFL draft in Jalen Carter. Now we know the off the field stuff, cost benefit analysis there, pretty much up and down. Nolan Smith, a lot of people thought, including myself, he might go number 10 overall to the Eagles. They got him at 30. Guy like Calais Ringo, you get early in the 4th round. That was a good decision. Essentially gave up a 2024 third rounder. So you see the value. Eagles had him graded as a sort of 2nd or 3rd round prospect. I guess you can talk about why didn't they take him early. Now, in the 3rd round, when they went with Sidney Brown and the Alabama tackle, what's his name? I'm
Tyler
dropping.
Steen, I think.
Tyler Steen, yeah. Thank you. Why didn't they take him there? You can argue. I thought it had something to do with his shoulder issues. That's why he kind of fell. The Eagles claim that it wasn't that. I don't know if I necessarily believe him. Otherwise, they would have taken him earlier. But he's a tremendous talent. They got talent up and down. Everywhere they pick somebody, the so-called experts say they should have gone higher. Then DeAndre Swift, they got him for, trinkets, essentially because of what the lines pigeonholed themselves there. He made good decisions. And that's why I said, I'm not going to grade players. Players are about development, and we'll see how these guys shake out. A lot of potential. Some will hit, some will not hit like everybody else. But the decisions, everything the Eagles do, almost to a T, makes sense. Whereas I brought up a couple teams, their decisions don't make sense. Pretty much everything the Eagles do makes sense. I mentioned linebacker. That's one spot where you can say, maybe you've gone a little bit too far. But there's not much to criticize, unfortunately.
Good decision making all around by the Eagles brass. So we'll recap just to name a few of them. Joseph Ngata, wide receiver from Clemson, was signed on the undrafted market. John mentioned Ty Zentner, a little punter competition for Aaron Cepas, which a lot of Eagles fans wanted. Trevor Reed, offensive lineman out of Louisville, a little dart for the Stoutland University. Eli Ricks is the popular name everyone's discussing, the cornerback out of Alabama who transferred from LSU. Another cornerback, Mekhi Garner, cornerback out of LSU. And Jadon Hazelwood, wide receiver, Arkansas, who played with Jalen Hurts, and Jalen had some good things to say about him. And then a linebacker, Ben Van Sumeren, and me and John just went in depth a little bit about that position. So overall, good decision making. Seems like
by the way, a little bit of a late addition, real quick, before we leave. Colorado tight end Brady Russell, who was the nephew of the Eagles' senior personnel director, advisor to Howie Rosen, Matt Russell. So a little nepotism as well. We'll
nice,
get that in there.
Family ties and a tight end. Any competition for Grant Calcaterra there?
I don't think so, but we'll see. I haven't looked into his history that much, but obviously Matt being here, it might be a favor. Who knows? I did think that was an under sort of. I always say if you really want to improve the Eagles' running game, it's pretty good already. But if you really want to improve it, third wide receiver, second tight end was an underrated aspect of that, because the Eagles' running game is about creating spacing and manipulating the numbers up front. And this was such a deep tight end draft. I thought, they might try to get an upgrade at tight end behind Dallas Goedert. Didn't work out that way. I don't think Brady Russell's going to be that guy, but it is something they could have used.
Yeah, I remember, night one of the NFL draft, Seth Joyner was clamoring for Michael Mayer at the end of round one.
He's a great player. I'm surprised he didn't go. There's an example. If this were 1985, he would have been a top 10 pick, but different.
I guess it would have got the Eagles into more of that 12 personnel too.
Yeah. Really good tight end Old school, though. Old school tight end.
All right, that's going to do it, John. Thanks very much for giving the hit and the breakdown on the undrafted free agency class. Overall, seemed like a pretty good NFL draft weekend for the Eagles. I saw a quote floating around there from Peter Schrager on the NFL Network that some league executives are getting annoyed at how much praise Howie Roseman's getting.
Yeah, these guys, I kind of mentioned that yesterday. These guys are getting tired of being described as getting fleeced. And Howie's very cognizant of that. He does not like when people say that. Because
I remember somebody from Crossing Broad asked him that at the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and he was not happy
Pagan asked him that. He does not like that. He wants to make sure these guys pick up the phone. Now you're going to have Brad Holmes in Detroit. He's getting it. Mickey Loomis, he got John Robinson fired. Let's be honest. He got him fired. He does not like that.
You see the 215 number calling, and all of a sudden they stop answering.
But these guys, they look like useful idiots to Howie Roseman. They really do. And some of these younger GMs, man, boy, he takes advantage of them. And he's got a lot of experience, and people undervalue that because so many, all these young GMs, they get praised for trading down all the time. Oh, they're accumulating assets. And meanwhile, Howie's going targeting impactful players. And he's taking advantage of a lot of because there's so much turnover at GM. These guys, they make a couple bad decisions, they're out. And the cycle starts over again with an inexperienced guy who's not used to it. So again, I always try to sneak in there, Jeffrey Lurie. Don't sleep on how important it is that he gives Howie Roseman the ability to think long term, because a lot of these guys have to think short term, because if they don't, they're going to lose their jobs.
Yeah, so credit to the whole Eagles brass. John, final question. If you had to pick one, and I'm going to put you on the spot, if you had to pick one of these undrafted guys that could make the 53-man roster, who do you have?
Oh boy, I'm going to go Ben Van Sumeren for special teams, though, because they need so much help on special teams. And that would be my other one, the punter, Ty Zentner. So those two would be, I think they have an opportunity, because remember, we just talked about, the Eagles also need bodies at linebacker.
Right.
So I'm not saying he's going to play a linebacker. He's not. But they need bodies at that particular position. And if he can just run and tackle people on special teams, he can.
Particularly at the end of the roster there, at the end of the 53, you need guys that can play special teams.
Exactly. So that's my sort of outside the box thinking. And Ty might just beat out Aaron Cepas. So
yeah, I'm thinking he might have a chance to do that, especially after Cepas squabbled on the biggest stage last year. But that's going to do it for our recap on the undrafted free agents. John McMullen broke it down pretty good and gave you some good tidbits on each one of those guys. Thanks for tuning in here on the final undrafted free agency edition of the JAKIB Draft Special, brought to you by IBEW Local 98. John, we will catch you in the morning on Birds 365. Thanks, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Have a good one, Eagles fans.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia?
58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the Mommy Slam Dunk Champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.